Welcome to Talking Buffalo, featuring conversations with guests from around the world of sports, media, pop culture, and all things Buffalo. With your host, Patrick Moran.
All right, what is going on, everybody? How you doing? Welcome to another episode of Talking Buffalo, your weekday daily driver for Buffalo sports talk and more. My name is Patrick Moran. Thank you very much, as always, for watching, for listening, for following, for subscribing. I can't begin to tell you how much I appreciate each and every single one of you. If you have not yet followed this podcast, whether you're doing it on the audio side, Apple, Spotify, or whether you're checking us out on YouTube, please make sure that you subscribe. It continues to help this show grow. Today is our Podbag episode. This is something we've been doing semi-regularly of late, mainly on Wednesdays, continuing to do that today. This is the episode where the listeners and the viewers of the show control the narrative. I'm taking some of your questions, some of your takes, pretty much exclusively all about the Buffalo Bills today, and kind of in some cases just reading them off, and others I will give you my takes, my responses to them. This is our interactive episode. I like doing this a lot because I think it's a chance to get the people who watch and listen to the show involved. So just so you know how it works, if you want to have your take or your question featured on this Podbag episode that we're doing weekly, just go to any video that we put up on YouTube, leave a comment. I comb through those pretty regularly, or you can tweet at me at Patrick Moran TB. Of course, you can also email me at talkingbuffalopodcast@gmail.com. And that's how it works. Got some good ones that we're going to get to today. Real quick, though, before we get cooking, I'd be remiss if I didn't take this opportunity. This is airing anyway on May 15th. Big shout out. Happy birthday to my mother. My mom is turning 73 years old today. 73, still alive, still kicking, living down in Virginia along with my sister. Love you very much, Mom. Happy birthday. Also, in terms of news, not really covered on this Podbag episode, but we will be talking about it tomorrow plenty. The NFL announced that the Buffalo Bills, week 2, Thursday Night Football, Amazon Prime, the Bills will be going to Miami. I don't like it. I'm always a big fan of going to Miami late in the season. I think it's good for, obviously, the team advantage-wise. They're not playing in that sweltering heat. I still can't get over week 3 a couple of years ago when it was just like oppressively hot. And as somebody who's lived in Florida for 5 years, I went to an early season game, I think maybe 2017 or some. Man, it was just uncomfortable as a fan. But anyway, I know a lot of fans like to plan a trip to Miami every year. So it kind of sucks that they're going to Miami in September as opposed to, say, November or December. But silver lining, and there's always a silver lining, or at least most of the time there is. I do like the fact that now that means Miami will be coming to Buffalo later in the season. So again, weather-wise, hopefully it'll be a little bit colder. And look, if you got to go to Miami and you got to do it in September, I think it's a lot better to do it on Thursday night as opposed to Sunday afternoon at 1 p.m. The sun will not be a factor in this game. And it's still probably going to be hot, but at least it'll be relatively cooler. So if you got to do it, I guess that's the week to do it early in the year, and especially at night. Also probably means, and maybe even by the time you hear this, it's already leaked out, but week 1, 2 things. Number one, that first game the Bills play week 1 is absolutely going to be Sunday at 1 p.m. because the Bills are playing Thursday Night Football. They're not going to play Sunday Night Football or Monday Night Football and have to come back and play again on Thursday. So they will be playing Sunday, 1 p.m. You have to assume that they're not going to play their first 2 games on the road. So that very likely means that week 1 will be in Orchard Park Sunday at 1 p.m. And man, oh man, what What a good way to start the season. A 1 p.m. Sunday home game to get everybody going. Anyway, tomorrow's show, we're going to be live tomorrow, tonight, depending on when you're listening to this. Tone Pucks is going to be with me here in studio. I think we're going to go on live Wednesday night at 9 p.m. and we will have plenty of reaction to the schedule, which by that time will be officially released. So we'll react to the Bills schedule, talk about what we liked, what we didn't like about the schedule. We'll also talk about Lindy Ruff, some news with the Sabres. They are bringing Seth Alpert up. We'll react to that. Some MVS stuff, which I'm about to get into here in just a quick second. So that will be on the next episode of Talk of Buffalo. And again, that'll be live with Tone Pucks, Wednesday, 9 p.m. And then, of course, we'll drop afterwards in audio podcast form. As for today, let's get into this right now. I don't want this to be a long episode. I'm not even going to put down one name because within minutes of this happening on Tuesday morning, a bunch of people chimed in. So I'll just say bunch of people. Thoughts on the Marquez Valdez-Scantling signing? Look, I don't know, man. I'm a little bit taken back. Just like I think maybe some people were taken back by me with my reaction to Chase Claypool a couple weeks ago. So the Bills signed Chase Claypool a couple weeks ago, and it was one of those, well, you're throwing a dart at the board, see if it sticks. No harm, no foul, no risk signing. If he doesn't work out, you just cut him in camp. And my reaction to that was not that. I was really annoyed that the Bills signed Chase Claypool. I just thought it was a waste of a body in camp, somebody who's going to take reps away from somebody else. Long story short, without regurgitating how I feel about Chase Claypool, I don't feel much about Chase Claypool at all. I don't think much of him. So I hated that signing. MVS, it's a different story. All right, look, it's May 14th, man. I like this signing. And again, like Chase Claypool, this is Brandon Beane throwing a dart at the board. I get that. But unlike Chase Claypool, I feel like this is a worthy one. And look, I'm not going to sit here and talk about, MVS being like some stud player, a guy who's been consistently good throughout his career. I mean, let's just keep things real. If MVS was that good of a player, probably wouldn't be sitting as an unrestricted free agent the morning of May 14th, right? I get that. He was cut by the Chiefs this offseason, although let's be fair, financial stuff has at least a part in that. He had a 3-year, $30 million contract. They cut him after 2 years. Bills fans should certainly be able to relate to some cap casualty moves that were made this offseason. Jordan Poyer, Mitch Moyer, Trey White. I'm not trying to say that MVS is a superstar player or on that same level as some of the guys the Bills cut, but you get my point. It was at least somewhat financially driven. And we all know the story with MVS. Big guy, 6'4", gets down the field, a legitimate deep threat. But we also know that he drops the hell out of the football. Way too many drops. I think PFF had it at like 12.5% or something crazy like that. Eric Turner from Cover One, I saw a tweet that he put out there that through True Media, according to their website, that his drop rate is pretty much the same as Gabe Davis. So dropping passes is something that, Bills fans are used to seeing. His target percentage success throughout his career, not good. Only 42.7%. That's pretty terrible. And again, irritating drop rate. You probably, if MVS makes this roster, if he's playing on Sundays, Josh Allen's going to roll out, catch him open on 3rd and 6, and he's going to drop a pass. You're going to want to punch your TV. That's going to happen a couple times a year. Guaranteed, because that's just what he is at this point of his career. But look, he's a big dude. He's got great speed. He's a big play guy. And I've sat here so many times over the last 2 years. I've talked about this on the show, and I'm not going to go into the whole thing right now. But I remember having Tyler Dunn on with me, an episode that we did live at Imperial Pizza. And this was well before the Sean McDermott piece that, so many Bills fans will forever associate Tyler with. I'm talking after they lost to the Bengals 2 years ago in the playoffs. And Tyler sat there at that booth with me, and what he said just resonated with me. It's time for the organization. It's time for the fans to start moving the goalposts back. How you grade these players, it should be on a curve. How they perform in the postseason needs to start mattering a lot more. There are too many players on the Buffalo Bills in recent years that looked really good for big chunks of the regular season and then face plant in the playoffs. This is what I like about Marquez Valdez-Scantling, folks. He is the polar opposite. His target rate percentage sucks in the regular season. Way too many drops in the regular season. But this guy's been money in the playoffs, man. He has been clutch in the playoffs. MVS raises his game in the playoffs. Last year, everyone talked about the Chiefs' offense kind of sucking and being carried by the defense, but yet they still win a Super Bowl. A lot of that's true. But you know what else? MVS, as much as he struggled during the regular season, is inconsistent and wonky as his play was during the season. MVS had a touchdown catch in the Super Bowl. MVS had a 32-yard catch against the Ravens. In fact, that was the catch that put the game away, the AFC Championship game. MVS had a 32-yarder and a 30-yard catch against the Buffalo Bills in the AFC divisional round, including the game-clinching catch as well. No drops in his career. That's crazy. As much as he drops the football, and granted, this is not a large sample size, but in his career, MVS has been targeted 38 times in the playoffs. He's got 24 catches and 0 drops in his playoff career. And if you want to go and just say, all right, well, last season, a little bit fluky there, touchdown in the Super Bowl, 3 catches of at least 30 yards between the Baltimore and Buffalo playoff wins. Well, in the AFC Championship game the year before that against Cincinnati, your boy had 6 catches for 116 yards. So, look, I'm not going to take up this entire episode talking about MVS today. In fact, I want to save a lot of this for Tone Pucks. But here's my point. He has stepped up in the playoffs, and there's definitely some things about him to not like, no special teams value, and he's going to probably be a guy who's wide receiver 4, wide receiver 5 on this roster. So no special teams value. That's not good. Not the greatest route runner. And then the drops. Major red flags. There's no question about it. But again, this is a guy who's done some good things. He's a winner. He's won a Super Bowl the last 2 years with the Chiefs. That should count for something. And most importantly, he seems like a guy who is playing his best football in the biggest moments when everything's on the line in the playoffs, which is the opposite. And look, let me be careful. Ain't trying to compare the dude to Stefon Diggs. Stefon Diggs is one of the elite wide receivers in the NFL. No question about that. But again, along the lines of too many guys on the Buffalo Bills play really good in the regular season and face plant in the playoffs. Stefon Diggs is one of them. Ed Oliver, there's plenty of others. Tremaine Edmonds, when he was here, nothing in the playoffs. I get that. But this is a guy I like. And I'm kind of a little bit befuddled that the reaction, at least from what I've seen early on Tuesday about the signing, I would say ranges from lukewarm to just flat out negative. And I think a lot of the people who have the flat out negative response are those who are still obsessed with Stefon Diggs and just can't get over him leaving. I really think that's part of it. Anyway, when it comes to MVS, I like the signing. We saw last year that the Bills plucked Leonard Floyd in the beginning of June. Didn't think much of it at the time, and look what he turned out to be. I think there's an opportunity there for MVS to carve out a role on this team. It's a little weird. This wide receiving room is really weird, and I don't know what to make of it. So many big guys. They were already big. Now they go add another 6'4" guy. I really don't. I have to kind of see how things play out, and someone left a comment. But anyway, my initial reaction, my thoughts to MVS signing is I liked it. And I'm not just saying that as a Homer fan after the fact, because quite frankly, I've mentioned MVS on this podcast quite often, a little bit before free agency, a lot after they signed Chase Claypool, who I hated. But anyway, I'm good with the signing, man. I think potentially, again, low risk, high potential reward. I truly think that's what MVS is, where I just don't see any meat on the bone when it comes to Chase Claypool, who, barring a shitload of injuries, ain't going to be on this roster. He might not even be on the roster by the second preseason game. All right, I want to get to another one before I get to the break here. Nathan A. Brown says, the draft is over. The feeding frenzy of free agency is done. Where do you rank our Bills today before cuts start happening? Good question, good take. I'm going to get into the weeds. Let's not do that right now. It's still May, but it's still a good football team. And that's not even the opinion of a Bills fan or myself, content creators, media. If you want to know if the Bills are still good, look at Vegas. Vegas don't lie. And I think right now the Bills are tied for 5th among betting favorites to win the Super Bowl. They're in a 3 or 4-way tie. But no matter what way you look at it, the Bills are still among the top 25% of teams that are favored to win the Super Bowl. It just seems, especially if you look at it from a national microscope right now, because of all the turnover and all the changes, it just seems like the Bills, they're headed for a down year. Because you look at the names. Again, Jordan Poyer is a big name. Micah Hyde is a big name. By the way, I don't know if you guys caught Micah Hyde on Eric Wood's Centered on Buffalo podcast this week. I'm not 100% convinced dude's retiring. I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't even predict it, but I also would not be floored. I would not be stunned if Micah Hyde ends up playing this season, and maybe even with the Buffalo Bills. I'm just saying, I don't think that's out of the picture. But anyway, back to my point. Hyde, Poyer, Trey White, Mitch Morse, and then, of course, Stefon Diggs. A bunch of big names that national people know well. And now they're all gone. And there's lots of question marks about this team. And there are question marks about this team. I'm not going to sit here and say this is not a team without question marks. This is not a team without flaws. There's plenty of questions right now with this football team. But they're still good. There's a lot of talent on this football team. They still have one of the top, in my opinion, 3 quarterbacks in the NFL. A good defense. A team that knows how to win. A team that knows how to win the games that they're supposed to win during the regular season, which does matter. A team with a lot of big game experience. And a team that's got a good core of young skill position players on both sides of the football. It's just easy to blow off the offense. People are going to just sleep on guys like Dalton Kincaid and James Cook, nationally at least anyway. Dalton, James Cook, Khalil Shakir, Curtis Samuel's still young. They just drafted a rookie with the first pick, Keon Coleman. So anyway, I think the Bills, where do they rank? I think they rank as a team that should be favored to win their division. A team that, if they can stay healthy and just play reasonably well, I think this is the best team in the division. Still, I think this is one of the top maybe 3 to 5 teams in the conference, and it's all about getting in the playoffs, right? If you win the division, you get into playoffs and you get a home game. You get to that divisional round. I mean, the Bills have been the favorite the last couple of years, and they've fallen on their face in the divisional round. So I don't know. I think this team still right now, it's different, but it's still plenty good. Anyway, quick break, come back, and I got a handful more. Some good ones coming up right here after the break. All right, we're back with our Podbag episode here, kind of going over some questions, some takes from fans who watch and listen to the show. Eric Allen says, Which offensive, and I love this question. In fact, this question right now is this is the title of this episode. This is the title question. Eric says, which offensive and defensive player do you think is the biggest wild card? Good or bad? Who do you think is going to be a wow? I didn't see that guy coming. All right. Well, so last year, pretty obvious. It was Terrell Bernard. Nobody, well, I shouldn't say nobody. Most people, certainly including me, thought very, very little of Terrell Bernard about a year or so ago. Went into camp, could not believe that the Bills were only going to replace Tremaine Edmonds with either Terrell Bernard or Tyrell Dodson. That was like the big camp battle, and I couldn't believe my eyes. I couldn't believe it was happening. Then I went to camp, plenty of practices, and I saw basically nothing from Terrell that would suggest to me this dude's going to be a star, a really good player. Didn't even play in the preseason. Won the job because Tyrell Dodson wasn't good enough to play middle linebacker, and he turned out to be a stud. Now, a year later, going into the season, I cannot wait to see what Terrell Bernard does healthy with hopefully healthy Matt Milano next to him. So anyway, that was last year. This year, I don't see a coming out of nowhere, like a guy that you're not even thinking of whatsoever that becomes that guy, that wow guy. But the person I landed on, and I did spend some time thinking on this, I'm going to stay on the defensive side of the ball. I'm going to go defensive line, and I'm going to say A.J. Epinesa. And again, not that young. I get it. He's been in the NFL. He played for the Bills for 4 years, and they re-signed him, gave him some pretty good money. But I look at what he's done and what his role has been on this football team right now. He's played 50% of snaps, and I actually went and did the homework to back this up, to look this up. I wanted to make sure before I started talking about this. A.J. Epinesa has played 50% or more of the Bills' defensive snaps just 2 times in 17 games last year. That's it. 2 times in 17 games, he played at least half the snaps. Go back to 2022, 3 times in 17 games. Go to 2021, just once in 17 games. So A.J. Epinesa has played just 50% or more of the Bills' snaps defensively in 6 of 51 games over the last 3 years. Just one of those, once out of 51 games, did he line up and play more than 55%. So he has not been on the field a lot. Basically, he has been on the field for half the game, or usually less. I'm sorry, not even most of the time. He's been on the field for less than half the game almost all the time. But yet, this is still a guy who had 6.5 sacks last year and 6.5 sacks the year before. Plus, over the last 2 years, he's had 2 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. So his production has been really good. And at times, I thought he looked borderline dominant. Last year, I thought he looked borderline dominant, and then he hurt his ribs. I think it was actually, ironically, against Kansas City Chiefs. He picked off Pat Mahomes. He got hurt on that play, his ribs, and he wasn't the same player after that. So I look at him right now, and I look at this team. They lose Leonard Floyd. They bring in Dwayne Smoot, who I'm not extremely high on, but his contract tells me that if he stays healthy through camp, that's probably your defensive end, your 4th end. You got Von Miller, 35 years old. I think at this point, he probably is going to be a pass rush specialist and not much more. Like, they'll try to keep him off the field as much as possible if it's not a surefire passing down. Kind of what they did last year with Vaughn. The difference being this year, of course, you hope with him being 100% healthy when he's actually on the field, he will be a productive player and not just some dude who's out there taking reps away from somebody else, because that's what Von Miller was for most of last season. But anyway, and then you got Greg Rizzo. I see a path right now with A.J. Epinesa where he's going to get 60% of the snaps, maybe even a little bit more, most games. So if you're talking, 15% of the snaps more than he's gotten the last couple of years, and he already had 6.5 sacks, plus he was hurt last year. I look at AJ Epinesa and I see a guy that maybe at the end of the regular season, we're like, wow, AJ Epinesa had 11 or 12 sacks this year. I didn't see that coming. Wow. So I think that's my guy. And it's a good question, too. I really like that question because, again, there's no coming out of nowhere. Like AJ Epinesa wouldn't be coming completely out of nowhere. But I think if I told you right now, which I am telling you right now, AJ Epinesa can get 11 sacks this year, I think you'd be like watching this or listening, you'd be like, wow. So, yeah, I'm going to go with AJ there. Let's continue here. Filthy Beast 79 is just plain sad at this point that some Bills fans keep comparing his team to the Chiefs, especially when they couldn't beat them with a loaded roster. By the way, loaded, he's got an air quotes there. And now magically this team is going to somehow be better with one of the worst wide receiver, among other position rooms in the league. As always, I will thank at Filthy Beast 79 for the comment. I appreciate you taking the time. Of course, I don't agree with you at all. It's just sad to say they can't beat the Chiefs. Yes, they can. That's the thing. Look, they beat the Kansas City Chiefs. Not once, not twice, 3 straight years in the regular season, all at Arrowhead. So you can't, first of all, right there, you can't say they can't beat the Chiefs because they just beat them 3 straight years. And I know you would come back at me and say, well, what about the playoffs? And you're not wrong. But it's not like the Chiefs. I mean, in 2020, they were just a better football team. Even though the Bills led at the end of the first quarter, you kind of felt what was coming, and it did. But the last 2 times the Bills and the Chiefs have faced off in the playoffs, once in Kansas City, once in Buffalo, you go back to 2021, the Bill. Do we really need to relive 13 seconds? You know the story. You know the deal. The Bills had them dead. That game was over. Sean McDermott blew it. Straight up. None more, none less. Sean McDermott blew that game. And then last year, the Bills are winning at halftime. Bills were winning a majority of that game against the Chiefs. Should have won. Should have won that game. So to say that they're not capable of beating them, that's ridiculous, man. That's truly ridiculous. Now you could say they just can't get over the hump when it matters. That's fair because they haven't, and they're going to need to. But I don't know. When I go into this season right now, I'm thinking about a lot of things. I'm not thinking that the Bills are incapable of beating the Chiefs because I truly, truly believe that they are. They just got to put it together at some point, and they haven't. So anyway, all right, at Bills Mafia Experience, viewers, and he's referring to a YouTube video that I had with Joe from Queens the other day. He says, viewers, please try to get over Diggs, the narcissist locker room cancer, and try to see the real positives. Pat brings on Joe from Queens, even more unrealistically negative, and cries about Diggs being gone even harder. Guys, please watch the episode of Locked On Bills. Then afterwards, check out what Greg Cassell had to say about Diggs as well. Like, Diggs is no longer a fully dimensional player. He can no longer stack DBs. He can't win vertically. He's not a number one. Maybe that has something to do with the screens and so on with Diggs. He can't win deep, and he is inefficient over 10 yards, according to multiple analytics. All right. Well, thanks for the comment at Bills Mafia Experience. You sure you're not Joe Marino from Locked On Bills plugging your show here on mine? Joking. Anyway, look, you're right about one thing, man. We'll call my guy out. Joe is still bitter about the Bills trading Stefon Diggs. He is. I don't think he would deny that either. And there's a lot. He's not by himself, man. I see lots of people who are still pretty bitter about losing Stefon Diggs or trading Stefon Diggs. I've kind of been back and forth, man. It's been a soap opera with me. I like to trade at first. I got really, really mad because I'm like, later on I'm talking about, because I thought the Bills were going to do more to address a position after Stefon Diggs got traded. I've talked about this on the show. I thought that was a chess move to set up the next chess move, but it turns out that all they did is draft a rookie, which they were going to do with or without Stefon Diggs on the roster anyway. And then they've signed a guy who just spent a year out of football because he got busted gambling. Chase Claypool, You already know how I feel about him and MBS, who I talked about earlier today. So I kind of been back and forth with that. But look, you're wrong about something, okay? And you said Stefon Diggs or Greg Cosell said, and I'm sure you're backing her. I don't know if you're saying he said that or you're saying that, but whatever the fact may be, I seen with my own eyes Stefon Diggs win deep at least 3 times last season in the back half of the season where Josh Allen just straight up overthrew his ass. Wide open, too. I know against Miami, he cooked Jalen Ramsey. It should have been an 86-yard touchdown right there. I think there was another game against New England where he got behind the defender and Josh missed him. And I know there was another one. So you can't say that Stefon Diggs doesn't win deep or can't win deep anymore because that's not true. We saw it 3 times. In fact, we saw it 4 times because we'll talk about the Chiefs game where he did beat him deep and Josh actually made a great throw and Stefon dropped the football. But he still won deep. So I don't buy that shit, man. I just don't buy that at all. You add in, forget the Kansas City game. We're talking about the regular season here. You look at his numbers. You add in the 3 times where he cooked a defensive back and was open deep for what would have been at least probably a 70-yard touchdown or more each and every time. You add in those 3 good throws. Diggs catches the ball. He now finishes the season with probably around 1,400 yards instead of 1,183 at least, and 11 touchdowns instead of 8. So if I tell you last year, Stefon Diggs has 1,400 yards, 11 touchdowns, ain't nobody going to be complaining about him being washed up or that he can't win at all levels or that he can't stack DBs anymore. So that I don't buy. What I do buy and what I think is a point you're trying to make, and I think rightfully so, is that it's time to move on for Stefon Diggs, that he was not the same player that he was when the Bills traded for him in 2020, that they have other weapons, that they want to be more balanced, that they don't want to have one receiver command the lion's share of the targets. I'll buy all that. And I'll also buy the fact that Stefon Diggs was a malcontent in the locker room. Look, it's kind of becoming public knowledge now. He hated the head coach. Him and Josh had a very shaky relationship. That's really hard to go into a season having a shitty relationship between top wide receiver and quarterback. And I think Brandon Beane got to a point. Plus, Brandon Beane, he almost came out and said it. Everybody knows it. Stefon Diggs wanted out. He wanted out. So I'm not going to sit here and just blindly defend Stefon Diggs. I'm good with them getting rid of him. I really am. Maybe this offense doesn't have a superstar like Stefon this year, but they might actually be better because of the balance, because of the unpredictability. But what I'm not going to do is sit there and agree about, and I don't care if it's a listener to the show. I don't care if it's an established NFL analyst. Don't tell me that Stefon Diggs can't win deep. We saw him win deep plenty last year. The connections just weren't there, and then the 4th time he dropped it. A few more here. Daniel Hirsch says, if the Bills had grabbed Xavier Worthy, people would be complaining about his 165 pounds wouldn't survive the season. Everyone has a choice. You could be hopeful and positive, or you could be critical and negative. I still believe. Look, you're right about the mindset. This is something that Anthony Marino on our Tuesday shows constantly talks about on the air, whether it's to the audience, whether it's to me personally. Things happen, and it's your choice if you want to be hopeful or positive or critical and negative. I mean, you said it perfect there. I'm going to give you a hot take for what it's worth. I hate the term believe. And by that, I mean, said it believe, spelling it Bill, B-I-L-L, leave. I just think that shit is corny as hell. I'll put that out there. At Sean Kula, 11B. As far as Keon Coleman, I don't know. 600 yards for a wide receiver, 133rd overall would be a letdown unless he gets 8 to 10 touchdowns. I'm not going to go there, man. I don't buy that. If I told you right now that Keon Coleman will finish the season with 600 yards and 6 touchdowns his rookie year, would you sign up for that? And I'm speaking to everybody out there right now. 600 yards, 6 touchdowns, Keon Coleman as a rookie taken in the 2nd round with this offense and what they have around it, would you sign up for that? Let me know. I'm genuinely asking a question. Me personally, if you told me in May Keon's going to have 600 yards, 6 touchdowns as a rookie, I'm signing up for it. John Slater, I don't get the problem. All right. So now this question, I want to preface this. This question was posed, or statement, I should say, was posed shortly before MVS signed with the Bills. But I thought he brought up a good point. 'Cause, I got something to say about it. He says, John Slater goes, I don't get the problem with the Claypool signing. Just cut him if he's terrible in training camp. Was it because the Fish signed Odell Beckham Jr. the same day? Thanks for that, John. And your answer is yes. And again, this is before, he sent this before MVS, but there are lots of reasons why I did not like the Chase Claypool signing. Not going to get into all of them again, but I still say there's almost no chance he makes his roster. Plus, going back to the Diggs trade, I was waiting for a bigger move to come. I did think Odell Beckham Jr. was going to be in play. Yes, I know that Odell Beckham Jr. is not the same guy that he was with the New York Giants years ago, or maybe even early on with the Cleveland Browns, but he's still a good football player. So yes, it did annoy me and probably made my reaction worse towards Chase Claypool, that the Bills signed Claypool, and then Miami, who's already got Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle, comes back and they get Beckham with their 2 blazing fast running backs. Holy shit. Is that a fast offense down there in Miami? Good point, though. At Irma Gersh, we don't know jack shit in May. Let's evaluate the wide receiver room in November when there's a body of work. Keon could be a beast or bust. Samuel could be a stud or a slug. Let's back the truck up and see what happens on the field. Good point. Don't really got anything else to add there. Thank you for that. A couple more here. Bo says, is there any possibility that Shaq Lawson comes back on a minimum contract? He didn't play all that bad last year. I know he wasn't great, but maybe we just need him for depth. Any chance of that happening? Bo, I would say if he did come back, he'd be competing with Casey Toohill for defensive end 5 or maybe defensive end 6, depending on how Javon Solomon, the 5th-round rookie, looks in camp. I really don't think Solomon's getting cut. I think the Bills are locked in. I think Dwayne Smoot's contract, the way it's structured, I think it's a lock. He makes the roster if he stays healthy. So there's your 4. And again, I think Javon Solomon's going to make this roster. So if the Bills brought back Shaq Lawson, he'd be competing with Casey Toohill for maybe a spot. I mean, I'm assuming the Bills would keep 6 defensive end. Maybe they only keep 5. They kept 5. Toohill and Shaq could both get caught. Anyway, sure, it's possible. I just think even if the Bills, if Shaq decided to come to Buffalo, give it a shot at camp, I wouldn't say his chances of making this football team are great. 2 more here. Joseph G. Adams. McChoke runs the show. I put this on for a reason. All right, so let me start that over. Joseph G. Adams says, McChoke runs the show. My best buddy is very close with the entire coaching staff, and I know for a fact he's the CEO running everything. It's his organization with little to no input from ownership. I'm trying to hold in my laughter here. He's also a bad tipper at the country club. Some personal slander going on here, talking Buffalo with fans who are not very high on Sean McDermott. All right, let's kind of pick this apart a little bit quickly here with as much humor as possible, but also being real. McChoke, kind of funny. That said, look, if you want to peel off the layers, that's not the most inaccurate nickname ever. I mean, 2021 happened. Not being ready to play against the Bengals at home in the playoffs happened. The fake punt to Damar Hamlin last year happened. Not being the Chiefs at home when you should have won that game happened. So I can't completely discredit a fan who wants to call Sean McDermott McChoke. I just got to keep shit real here. I don't think it's even much of a secret. Continue with your point. I don't know about he's a CEO running everything, but I do know that his fingerprints are on everything. He has more say in the structure of the organization, not just the players he coaches, but the way things are, he probably has more say than a lot of other head coaches around the NFL. The stuff that makes me laugh is that he's a bad tipper at the country club. Think about that, folks. And do you buy that? If you're watching this, you listen to this, do you buy that? Do you think Sean McDermott is a bad tipper at the country club? Does Sean McDermott strike you as a bad tipper at the country club? I've been thinking about that since I saw that. And I'm like, not sure. Maybe he is. Maybe he is. That's interesting. Last one here. I'm just going to kind of tease at this one a little bit. Sean says, thoughts on the Sabres bringing in Seth Alpert to be Lindy's assistant? Feels completely predictable to me. Thanks for that, Sean. Yeah, it feels completely predictable to me as well. I feel like Lindy Ruff 1,000% knew before he agreed to be head coach and taking a 2-year contract. I'm sure it was part of the plan that Seth Alpert was going to be part of his staff for this year. Seems pretty apparent that the goal is for Lindy to be the coach now, get this ship right, turn things around, and then at some point with Seth getting some NHL experience on the bench, learning behind a mentor like Lindy, eventually taking over. Seems pretty obvious that's going to be the plan. I think that's obvious, but what's not, and I guess the only kind of mystery right now is, was this Lindy Ruff's decision or was this Kevin Adams' decision? Like, did Kevin say to Lindy, look, I want you to be the coach, take the job, but I'm telling you who your assistant coach is going to be, because NHL head coaches pretty much have their own staff. So the mystery is, did Kevin Adams tell him that I want him on your staff? Or did Lindy say, you know what? I want him on my staff. I think he's a good up-and-coming coach, and I think this is a good idea. That's the only real mystery right there. Tell you what, I'm going to pick up on that because I like that question tomorrow. So like I said, Tone Pucks is going to be on with me on the next episode, and we're going to have instant, because we're going to be going live right after the schedule comes out, instant live reaction to the schedule. We'll talk a little more about MVS, Seth Alpert here in Buffalo with Lindy Ruff, and much more. And I want you guys to leave your questions or have your takes. Again, keep commenting on the YouTube videos that we put out every day. Almost every episode of Talking Buffalo is also available on YouTube, which, by the way, if you're going to go there, make sure you're subscribed, hit that like button, and leave a comment. I will pluck some of those comments. I comb through them regularly, and we'll feature them on the show. But again, you can also tweet at me at Patrick Moran TV, or email me at talkingbuffalopodcast@gmail.com. All right, it's going to do it for today. Thank you very much. I like doing these, man. I like hearing from the people, what they're saying and what they're thinking. Anyway, brand new show coming up tomorrow. Talk to you guys then.